Guys, this is one of my favorite videos to make all year, and I cannot believe we are far enough in 2025 for me to make this video. This is 26 books that I want to read in 2026. Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm Tori, and I have two stacks of books to show you guys today. The way that I've split these out is I have books that are non-science fiction and fantasy, and books that are science fiction and fantasy. Fantasy is obviously my most read genre. However, I do read pretty widely into other genres during the year. And so I split it out by 10 books that aren't science fiction fantasy and 16 books that are. Now, these books have not all been on my shelves for the same amount of time. Some of them are newer acquisitions, and some of them I have had around for a while. I do like to keep things a little varied in the choices that I make, and I don't see this list as being a be-all end-all for 2026, as I'm sure most of you can relate. My mood changes a lot throughout the year in terms of what I'm interested in reading and what I'm feeling like, so this is kind of a guideline. This is something that I use every year to go back if I'm getting stuck, or if I see, oh yeah, I really wanted to read that book this year, because honestly, my brain is a sieve sometimes and I forget things. And so it's nice to have a little bit of just a checklist of books that I was really, really excited about, or that have been languishing on my TBR for a little too long. We're going to start off with a super new acquisition, Giants in the Earth by O.E. Rolvaag. This is the story of a Norwegian pioneer family who made their way across the Great Plains in the 19th century. And I picked this up when we were on vacation in South Dakota this past September because I really wanted to read something that had a direct historical tie to my family. I have a very strong Norwegian heritage through my dad's side of the family, and I've always wanted to delve a little deeper into the stories of some of the Norwegian immigrants that settled here in America. And this book, I didn't realize that it was such a well-known, beloved book when I picked it up. It just sounded really interesting, and I came to find out that this is actually a very lauded novel depicting the Norwegian immigrant's life in the 19th century, which is super, super cool. It is a little bit of a chunk, and I don't know how it's going to read. I don't know much about the actual family or the actual story within, but I think that this is going to be a really fun read. I'm really looking forward to reading some pioneer stories after we went on our trip to South Dakota in September, because it got me all fired up for that kind of time period. And this is one that I think is going to be an incredibly impactful read. Next up, we have Snow Falling on Cedars by David Guderson. This is a story that takes place in the 1950s, and there is a murder that happens, and there is a Japanese-American fisherman who is blamed for it. Now, this is all happening in the wake of the 1940s World War II disaster, and a lot of those prejudices and angers and old feuds had not died down. And I think that this one, having just recently read To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm curious to see if this has sort of a similar vein flavor to that, if it's going to delve into a lot of the prejudices and the way that these different cultures within the same area were at odds with each other, etc. This book comes very highly recommended to me, and I think I purchased it at least 2 years ago, so it has been on my TBR for a little bit of time, and I just think that this is going to be a phenomenal read. I've heard nothing but praise for it, and I'm really looking forward to checking it out. Then I'm going to continue my foray into the novels of Jane Austen with Persuasion. This will be my second novel of hers that I've actually read. I grew up on all of the adaptations for film and TV series and absolutely love them, so I am no stranger to the work of Jane Austen, just not in the original written format. I had a fantastic time with Northanger Abbey last year, which was my first official Jane Austen read, and it surprised me how much I enjoyed it, and her wit and just the way she so deeply understood the people of her time was really fun to read, and I have heard amazing things about Persuasion. A lot of people have said that it's an underappreciated gem within Jane Austen's canon of work, and it's another one that I know a little bit less less about. It was this one, Northanger Abbey and Mansfield Park, that I know the least about. Obviously, growing up with the Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma sort of crowd of adaptations. But Persuasion is one that I'm really looking forward to. I know the story enough, but I think that reading it in written form, again, is going to be super fun. So this will be my next Jane Austen attempt in 2026. Swerving towards the mystery side of things, I picked another Keigo Higashino book for my list in 2026, which I could not be more excited about because I really enjoyed discovering him as an author this year. And the book that I chose for my list was Journey Under the Midnight Sun, which I believe is a standalone. And it is quite a bit chunkier than the other two books of his that I have read. Now, Keigo Higashino is a Japanese murder mystery writer, and the way that he writes is so interesting because I have been sort of testing the waters with murder mystery and thriller this past year, as a lot of you know. And what I've discovered I really enjoy is something that focuses on the people, something that's still very character driven. Sometimes it's more of a why done it than a who done it. And I absolutely love Higashino's writing style, and I wanted to check out one that was completely unrelated to the two that I've already read in his Detective Kaga series, which I would highly recommend. In this book, there is a man who is found murdered, and there are two young people who become inextricably connected with the crime. This also takes place in the 1970s, so there's going to be a little bit of a historical fiction vibe to it, and we're going to be introduced to a new detective, because in each of his series or in each of his books, there is a different detective that leads us through the crime. So yeah, I'm very, very excited to get into more of Higashino's work this next year, and this one was an easy choice to put on the list as a priority read. Sticking with the historical fiction vibes, we are going to put The Diamond Eye by Kate Quinn on this list. This intrigued me so much. This has been on my digital TBR forever, and I just picked up the physical copy recently. This is the story of a young woman who becomes a sniper and goes up against Hitler's forces in Ukraine during World War II, and she becomes one of the deadliest snipers in that area at the time, and she becomes known to the Nazis as Lady Death. Now, if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what else I can say, because she also has a young son, apparently. And I just think that this sounds absolutely riveting, and I could not wait to get my hands on a copy of it, and I'm really, really looking forward to reading her story, because obviously based on a true story, and comes very highly recommended by a lot of historical fiction readers. So super excited about this one. I thought it sounded really intriguing, and it easily made my priority list for 2026. Next up is an author that I have read before. I had a middling experience with my first try of his work, but I wanted to try one more that came, again, highly recommended by some people in my audience this past year, and that is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. Now, I read We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker this year, and it was okay. I liked his storytelling style pretty well. I just didn't love the story and how it was handled, some of the character choices that were made. It just didn't land very well for me. But this one, I've heard, is a little bit darker in tone. It deals with a found family of kids, and I mean, really, it doesn't have to go much farther than that to sell me on the story. This story takes place in the 1970s, and it follows a young boy named Patch who becomes kind of a local hero. He's not very well off, but he becomes a local hero after saving the life of a wealthy family's daughter. And you'd think that that would be a great thing, and it would be a happily ever after. However, things start to get very tragic very quickly. I've heard this highly recommended, and it was the one that I wanted to try actually first from Chris Whitaker, but I decided to try We Begin at the End first. Again, it was fine, but this one I have really, really been looking forward to, and I wanted to make sure that I got to it in 2026. Now, I am determined, you guys, to make 2026 the year that I actually read another Jeff Shaara novel, because it is ridiculous how many times he's been on my TBR, been on my priority reads list, and I still haven't found the time to get to any of his books, which is really dumb because I love Jeff Shaara's writing. I don't know if you guys are like this, but every once in a while there are certain books or certain authors that I keep putting on the back burner because I know it's going to be a great time, and I'm like, well, I'll just set that one aside for a rainy day and see what happens, and then that rainy day just keeps getting put off. I don't know if you guys do that or if that's just a weird me thing. But this year we're putting To Wake the Giant back on my priority reads list. This is the story of Pearl Harbor. It's one of his books about Pearl Harbor, which is an area of World War II history that has always really fascinated me, and I've done a lot of reading in it. And I just really want to read a Jeff Shaara book again because he's such an excellent historical fiction military writer, and it's a war era of his that I have not read in before. I've mostly concentrated on his work about the Civil War. So this will be a new experience for me, and I really want to read this book. He's also got some books about the Korean War that I want to get into, but this is the one that I want to prioritize for next year. All right, guys, now I have 3 classics that are going to round out our non-science fiction and fantasy list. And the first one is going to be The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is a classic that honestly wasn't on my radar too much until the last year or so, maybe. And I started seeing here and there in different classic book discussions some very polarizing opinions about how this book was written, how the subject matter was handled, and people either gave it a lot of grace or really didn't like it or thought it was really brilliant. I'm very curious to see which side of the fence I'm going to land on with this. This is the story of a young woman who has to wear a physical mark as she goes out in public on her clothing that marks her, I believe, as a adulteress or something of that nature. I can't remember exactly. And it's just, I'm very curious to see how Hawthorne, at the time he was writing this, was exploring these kind of themes. So Scarlet Letter, I'm really excited to read this. It kind of came out of left field for me a little bit this year, but I got a physical copy of the book because it is definitely a classic that I want to have read. The second classic on this list is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. I've heard this one being talked about around the circles of BookTube in the last couple of years, and I am so intrigued. I'm expecting something a little bit dark, a little bit gothic horror, maybe. I don't know that much about it, which was, again, intentional. I try really hard not to dig into the books too much before I read them, so I don't know that much about it, other than that this follows a young woman who is newly married as the young bride to a nobleman who is haunted by the memory of his first wife, who is this incredible, beautiful, amazing woman. And it has kind of a dark vibe, even just from the synopsis. I've heard amazing reviews of this book, and it has just intrigued me more and more and more every time I hear somebody talking about it. So this one was another classic that was an easy addition to my 26 for 26 list. And last but not least is probably going to be my most ambitious read for 2026. I've had it on my priority reads before, haven't gotten to it yet, wasn't ready, and that's okay. I'm not going to push myself, but I really want to read this book. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. You guys, this is a massive book. It is a massive book. I have not read anything by Tolstoy as of yet. This is the official translation that I've been most recommended, the one by Richard Pavir and Larissa Volokhonsky. I think that this is going to be an incredible book. That's going to be one of those lifetime classics that really leaves a deep impact. I just need to read it. And it is intimidating, right? These giant chunky classics can be so intimidating when you pick them up. And it doesn't ever seem like there's a good way to integrate them into a busy TBR. But that's part of the reason why I wanted to put it on this list and why I really want to try to prioritize this next year, is because I do think books like this make me slow down, make me savor, make me think a little bit more than my average fare, and that's amazing, and I want more of that. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to read it yet. I will probably split it into sections and try to read a certain amount of the book every so often. I don't know. We'll see. I haven't completely decided yet. So if you guys have read War and Peace, or if you have any suggestions for how you read chonky classics, please put them down in the description below, because, or not the description, the comments, because I would love to hear all your tips and tricks for that. But you know what? I almost didn't put it on my list this year, and I was like, no, I want to read this. I'm putting it on the priorities list, and we will see if we can manage to get War and Peace checked off the list in 2026. All right, let's get to the fantasy and sci-fi, shall we? The first one on my list of 16 books, which is very precariously balancing on the edge of my TV tray right now, is In the Shadow of Ruin by Tony DiBaggio. This is an indie fantasy book that I have had on my shelves for a ridiculous amount of time, and I've had it because I really want to read this. I love fantasy books that are set in worlds that are influenced not by Western cultures or Western countries. I'm pretty sure that the story in this book surrounds a succession war, which you guys know I always love, and we have a king who has kind of cohesively united these different tribes, and all of that work now hangs in the balance as he is facing down the end of his reign and people that are coming in and vying for his throne. So I'm very excited to read this. It is a shorter book. I think there's a second book available in this series. I have to look and double check that. But this one has been on my shelf for a really long time. I'm dying to read it. Keeping with that same theme, we're going to hold up another indie fantasy book that I am super excited to read that I've had on my shelf for way too long. Honestly, there's a few on this list that I'm gonna have to say, this has been on my TBR for way too long. But Memories of Blood and Shadow by Aaron S. Jones is another one that I have had on my shelf for a long time. And this one, I think, has a veteran soldier as the protagonist, which is a big checkbox for me. And that's about all I know. I know nothing about this magic system. I know nothing about the characters or the storyline, and that's completely okay. The reason I picked it up was because it came highly recommended for me specifically in my taste in fantasy by my friend Andrew at Andrew's Wizardly Reads. And you guys know that all of the recommendations I have gotten from Andrew that I've read in the last few years, I have absolutely loved. So this one, again, is one of those highly recommendeds from him to me, which is why I'm prioritizing it for 2026, because I think it's going to be a great time. A newer acquisition is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is another one that I had wanted to get the physical version of this for quite a long time. Finally, just broke down and did it this summer. And again, I don't know that much about this book, but what I do know is that everyone who has read it is kind of obsessed with it, which makes me all the more excited to read it. And I'm trying to remember if there's some kind of like magical realism aspect to this where we're kind of in our world and we're kind of not. Not entirely sure, but I've heard her writing is phenomenal, spectacular, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this is all about and why so many people have loved it so much. Next up, we're going back to an author who had a 5-star read for me here in 2025, and that is KJ Parker, with my second foray into his writing with The Folding Knife. This is another standalone alternate history. The thing about KJ Parker, and I love this, and I know this may or may not be a turn-off for some people, but I really appreciate that you can never quite tell if it's fantasy or not. It kind of flirts with the border between fantasy and historical fiction. It's set in his own world, but it doesn't have a strong or any magical presence in, especially the book that I just read this last year, The Company, which I absolutely loved. And this one, I believe, talks a little bit about banks and economy within banks in fantasy worlds, which I am all here for that. I love it when authors dig into like parts of a fantasy world or a historical world that we don't talk about that much. Really excited about that. I'm sure because it's KJ Parker, it's going to be all the scheming, all of the heavy thematic character struggles, and I can't wait. I'm so excited to read another KJ Parker in 2026. Now, I will be continuing with some of the other Discworld sub-series this next year, which is going to be on my video about my priority series, which you can watch up here. But there is another book that I wanted to throw on here that's technically part of a sub-series, but it also stands on its own a little bit more solidly than some of the other Discworld books, and that is Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett's wit within the fantasy genre is an absolute thing of beauty, and I feel like I have been made so much smarter as a reader just for seeing the way he handles deep thematic content alongside his famously hilarious wit. And I have heard that this is one of the best Discworld novels of all 41 or however many there are. I can't wait to read this. Every time somebody talks about it, I get the biggest sense of FOMO, like I want to drop everything and pick it up right now. Part of that's probably just because it's Terry Pratchett and I'm absolutely obsessed with his writing style. I should also mention that one of the reasons I'm even more excited to read this is because my sister-in-law is actually a postmaster, and so there's a lot of like postal system things that I know about and find really fascinating. All of the system, the processes of how mail gets delivered, and all of the things about that specific occupation I find really interesting. So I'm curious to see how Pratchett's gonna make fun of it, I guess, and have very deep things to say about it at the same time. Next up is a gorgeous indie fantasy that I've also had for quite a while on my shelves, and that is Sea of Souls by N.C. Scrimgeour. This is a book that is, I believe, the first in a trilogy. The third book is just about to come out pretty soon here, and I just want to show you guys really quickly because we all love looking at pretty books. The cover is pretty enough by itself. However, look at the naked hardcover on this book. Absolutely stunning. There's artwork in here. Even her like name and signature page is stunning. I get so excited when I see authors take the time to really make a beautiful book product. That always makes me very happy. Let's see if I can find another illustration for you guys. Beautiful illustration. It's an absolutely beautiful book. And it has a much less common fantasy creature at the heart of it, and that is Selkies, shapeshifters, but they're like ocean shapeshifters. N.C. Scrimgeour dives into her own culture and folklore to bring us this amazing ocean vibes Selkie fantasy. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to read this book. It's long overdue and I've heard nothing but good things about it. Next up, we have BookTube darling within the fantasy sphere this last year. And honestly, I have also been saying that I want more fantasy heists or fantasy murder mysteries, anything kind of that sort of genre mashup. And The Tainted Cup comes incredibly highly recommended as a sort of twist on the Holmes and Watson murder mystery detective pairing. I can't wait. You guys, I cannot wait to read this book. I think it's going to be amazing. It has gotten very high marks from all of the people I know who have read it, as far as I know. And I can't wait. I love the genre blend of mystery or detective with fantasy so much. And I love this cover. It's very fun. I love the design of this cover. That's an aside, but I just wanted to share because I think it's very cool. And also, this has to be one of the most floppy paperbacks I have ever owned in my life, which is also a point in its direction. So I hope that the content on the inside of this book is as delightful as the cover and the flop factor on the outside. Next up, we are going to have another standalone on this list. I tried to pick quite a few standalones because it feels easier than digging into a big series. And I also have my priority series list as well, but I really tried to focus on some standalones for this list. And one of those was Heart's Blood by Juliette Maurier. I read Daughter of the Forest at the beginning of 2024, and it blew me away. It was one of the fastest 5 stars I've given a book in a long time. And I bought pretty much all of her books after reading it, and I still haven't gotten to any of her other work, which is a tragedy, and I feel so upset with myself that I haven't read any more of her books since then. But we're going to rectify that in 2026 with Heart's Blood, which is a standalone, and this is her take on the Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I cannot wait for, because I'm just so curious to see what she's going to do with that particular fairy tale. And in her very intelligent way, she's going to make it really interesting, and she's going to explore some things within that I think are going to be really thought-provoking, which I'm looking forward to. So, Heart's Blood by Juliette Maurier hopefully will be my next read from her. Now, I'm not a very big short stories collection fan. However, I did make an exception for one book on this list that has been so highly recommended for one of its stories in particular, and that is The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. And the titular story within this book is the one that everybody absolutely raves about. They will not tell you what it's about because you have to read it for yourself, but apparently the ending is so emotionally powerful, it'll knock your socks off, which I can't wait. I love that kind of a story, but I didn't want to just put this on here for the Paper Menagerie story specifically. I really want to read everything within this book. And I know that the Paper Menagerie is not the first one represented in the book, which I'm actually okay with, because building up to it with reading some of Ken Liu's other work, I think is going to be the perfect experience for reading this short story collection. And I do want to challenge myself with some of the books that I put on my priority reads list, and this one is that for me, because typically short story collections don't tend to pull me in as heavily as novels, but I want to challenge that a little bit, and I have heard amazing things about his work, and I'm looking forward to trying it myself. Now we're going to go back to another author that I've read quite a bit from, and that is Fonda Lee, but this may not look familiar to all of you who have read the Greenbone saga like I have. This is Zero Boxer by Fonda Lee. This is a YA sci-fi book from Fonda Lee herself. She wrote it prior to writing the Greenbone saga, and I wanted to put a YA in here, and this has been on my shelf for a while, and I love Fonda Lee's storytelling style, and I'm dying of curiosity to see what she does with sci-fi and YA, because I think she's going to be amazing at it. And I wanted some sci-fi for next year anyway. This is going to be a super fast, quick read. I know that there's some kind of MMA fighting or like boxing/ring fighting going on in this book, and we have a young protagonist who is obviously one of those fighters. And I just think it sounds like an amazing time, and I love her writing anyway. So I wanted to give one of her lesser known books a try for 2026. All right, guys, this next one, I really debated whether or not I was going to put this on the list, because I still feel like I'm in a little bit of a burnout from this author after having read a lot of his work in the early years of my time on BookTube. But this is one that intrigues me a lot, and that is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter by Brandon Sanderson. Yes, I am taking a step back into the Cosmere. Pray for me. I really was so frustrated with the Stormlight Archive's direction during the end of Oathbringer and into Rhythm of War, and I had read so much of Brandon Sanderson's work that I just needed a big old break. However, this one really intrigues me, and I've heard it's a really beautiful story. I know that it does take place within the Cosmere still, but I don't think that it's a book that you have to have read everything else in the Cosmere to read or anything like that. I know there's some tie-ins with other characters within maybe Stormlight / some of the other series that he's written. But I want to dip my toes back in. I want to try this one. I've heard some really good things about it, and I think it's of the secret projects that he put out a couple of years ago. I think this one is the one that just called to me the most of the four. So we're going to try it. We're just going to see how it goes. It's a pretty short book, and I've heard it's really beautiful, visually, descriptively, And I'm actually really looking forward to that. So I think this is going to be a good way for me to jump in and try another Brandon Sanderson book after the break that I've been on. Moving on, this is a series that I could not be more excited to start in 2026. I was hoping to start it in 2025, but the cards just didn't fall that way, and that's okay. And that is A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. This is the memoirs of Lady Trent. And I am so looking forward to this slightly more, how do I put this, artistic and scientific exploration of fantasy. I think that this is going to be very different than a lot of the series that I typically read. My friend Kay from Kay's Hidden Shelf recently read, I think, the first couple of books in the series and absolutely raved about it, which makes me all the more excited. And I'm really looking forward to it. Following a woman whose job is to document dragons and scientifically study them just sounds like such a fun diversion from the traditional fantasy tropes. I cannot wait for that. Like, give me dragons, but I want it like this. I want something interesting. I want a twist on dragons, and I'm sure that Marie Brennan is going to give that to me in this series. Next up is a continuation of a series, which I didn't put a ton of those on this list, but this one I felt very strongly needed to be here. And that is The City of Marble and Blood, which is book 2 of the Chronicles of Hanover by Howard Andrew Jones, who tragically passed away last year. And I had read the first book of this series and really enjoyed it. It's classic fantasy, but told in such a fresh way, and it has a lot of the tropes and themes that classic fantasy was concerned with, but it's written in a way that, in my opinion, is way more palatable. Excellent, excellent writing. Hanover is a fantastic character, fantastic protagonist, and I'm not sure if he's going to do this in book 2 again, but in book 1, he had almost an episodic sort of structure to the book where we were getting almost a little bit of a different subgenre mashup in every episode of the story, which was really cool, and I loved that aspect of it. So I'm kind of hoping that he continued that here in book 2. I think there are 3 books out officially. I'm gonna have to double check that, I'm not sure, but I think there are 3 books, and I definitely wanted to continue with book 2 because it's been way too long and I should have gotten to it beforehand, but again, water under the bridge. So, City of Marble and Blood happening in 2026. Alright guys, as we're winding down to the end of our pile, we have a lit RPG. I have been very carefully sticking like a toe into the like shallow end of the pool of lit RPG because it's a subgenre that sort of intrigues me and also can go south for me very quickly. I'm very picky about this subgenre, which maybe is a me thing. But I have read a couple of lit RPGs that I really, really enjoyed, and I'm hoping to continue that with Darktown by Palmer Pickering. This is Tales of Temerity, book 1, level 1 of the Dragon's Crawl. So this is a series that she has planned, and we have Temerity and Half Pint, who is her sidekick Goblin, and they are going on a dungeon adventure, and I don't know a ton about it, and I've kept it that way intentionally, but I think this is going to be a really fun, lightweight way to step into more lit RPG, and also, because you know I love pretty books, there are so many illustrations in this book, you guys. There's an entire list at the beginning. Look how cute that is, first of all. There's a whole list at the beginning, and I absolutely love this detail so much. There's a list of illustrations, and she has the name of the artist right next to the page numbers where the illustration is, which I think is so cool. And also, that's so many illustrations, you guys. So it's going to be like a treasure hunt through the entire book as we get to each new illustration. They are literally peppered throughout this book, which is amazing. I love that visual addition to the physical copy. That's super cool. So I'm looking forward to trying Darktown by Palmer Pickering. I have read and enjoyed her work before, and I'm looking forward to trying it again. Another indie fantasy trilogy that I am buzzing to get to in the next year here, and I was, again, hoping to start it already, but that's okay. We're going to put it on the priority list, and we're going to get to it. And that is the Locke Institute trilogy, starting with The Crimes of Rooker Flynn by Andy Witham. Now, I have heard so many positive reviews of this since the series started coming out, I think last year. I don't even remember when the first book came out, but it hasn't been entirely long. Yeah, 2024. Trilogy is already done, so it's a complete trilogy. And I am getting portal fantasy, pirates, a mischievous character at the heart of the story who gets in a lot of trouble. And I'm really here for that. And I've heard that there's a lot of emotionally deep, heart-wrenching moments in this story as well. So honestly, it sounds completely up my alley, and I'm really looking forward to starting this trilogy with book 1 in 2026. And I'm sure it will be one that if I enjoy book 1 as much as I think I'm going to, book 2 and 3 are not going to be far behind. I say this with a lot of the books on this list, that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I haven't gotten to this yet, which honestly I could say about most of the books on my shelves. I'm only, you know, we're only human, right? We can only read so many books, and that's fine. This book is probably going to be the first book that I read in 2026 to make sure that I read it, because I have been so excited to read this book since the day I bought it, since the day it came out, and it's still sitting on my shelves, you guys. Like, of everything on this list, it's been here probably the longest, and I've been the most excited about reading it, and somehow I still haven't. And that is Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon. This one is kind of an elementally based story. It is a revolution story with a character who I believe is a slave. I'm trying to remember. There is a protagonist who is forced, along with other people, to go through these trials that bind chemicals to his body. And it's basically, he's a slave who, if he shows any kind of disobedience or diversion from his master's will, that it will actually burn him. And the elemental magic system sounds incredible. I've heard that for people who like the themes and sort of tone of Red Rising, that this is going to be a big hit. Book 2, I believe, just came out fairly recently, not like just now, but fairly recently. And I really want to read this book, you guys. I literally bought it when it came out, and I'm still sitting here holding it up on a TBR. It's fine. It's going to happen. But I'm pretty sure this will be my first read of 2026 if I haven't gotten to it before then, because I couldn't wait. But Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon. This one's happening. All right, guys, that is my 26 must-read books for 2026. Let me know down in the comments which books you cannot wait to read and dive into for next year. Have you started thinking about that at all? If you're completely a mood reader, that's okay. Just let me know some books that you're generally excited to get to in the future, because I love hearing what you guys are most excited about reading. And yeah, I hope you are all having a fantastic week. And I hope that you are reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.